Thank you for coming, Myra.
Thank you for having me, Tay.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Um, I want to start by saying that I've been really, really cognizant lately that this conversation is a conversation that I otherwise don't get to have or haven't gotten to have with people either that I know or don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But the premise of the podcast is, what is your identity to you? And what has that looked like over the course of your life? So, like, we all have identity or self identities, right? A way that we see ourselves, even if we don't tell everybody we see ourselves that way, or if it's not pleasant or whatever the case.
Mm-hmm.
But like, we see ourselves in a way that is largely responsible for the type of choices we make. So, like, how you see yourself dictates who you choose to be in a relationship with. Because you're like, either I deserve that or I don't deserve that. And so you stay or you go, right? Or like what kind of work you do. It's like if you know you're naturally a nurturer, then you might end up working in a school with young kids and you can give them the tough love that you know they need, right?
Right.
So shit like that.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So I like to think back to my childhood and like when I was like a toddler, right? Because that's like, as I was coming from a toddler is when I first started to recognize and comprehend the compliments I was getting from like my parents or my family or family friends. So it's like at that age that I started to understand he's cute.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like I have I have a measure of self esteem about my face that goes back to that,
Right.
right? Um, or funny, right? Everybody does not think I'm funny, but
That's what you
apparently
identify
a lot of people do,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's a thing that like I've carried with me for the rest of my life. Like apparently I'm funny, and so what happens when you have that identity
Mm-hmm.
is you tell more jokes,
Right.
or you aren't ashamed for people to look at you, look you in the face. You're not looking away from people so that you don't see them seeing you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or you might take pictures like more readily or whatever it is, or you
Right.
might talk to people more readily, right? Um, this is quite the long tail intro, but I just want to like set the framework for uh, the discussion.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So what was what were some of the earliest memories you have around like your own self-esteem and your own self-perception?
So I would say for me coming up, it was a little rough because um, I came up in the 90s, grew up on South Orange Drive and 10th Street, and basically um, it was getting diverse, but it wasn't as diverse.
Yeah.
So I would say like we were probably one of two Latino families that was in the area,
Yep.
right? So coming up, I really had a hard time identifying as to what race to identify with more.
Yeah.
Because I am Afro Latina.
Mm-hmm.
So in instance, like it was just sometimes it was confusing.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came up, I really didn't fit too much in with the Spanish people,
Yeah.
and I didn't fit too much in with African Americans. So it was just like a fight to understand myself and what I choose to influence me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say coming up, I was a little like insecure in regards to like who I am and how should I show up in the world, because it was such a confusing space for me.
Yeah. That's so like impactful. Like this recognition at a subconscious level that we have a need for belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And not feel it's like the same thing happens in people's families where it's like they're the black sheep and for whatever reason everybody else just does not vibe with them or rock with them or whatever, right? And that happens at young ages. But for you it was like in public.
Right.
It's like, you know, this feeling of like not just community but like kinship to a degree. of like my people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I dig that. And I love how much you embrace both.
I love it too. It took some time.
Yeah.
But you fall into the mindsets of what the expectations of those certain races are. So I would say throughout the years, I'm glad I was able to develop, a better sense of what I understood as self.
Yeah. Do you think that makes you more empathetic to both sides?
Yes. Yeah, it does.
Tell me about that.
So, just in conversation, like I'm hearing people, this big conversation around immigrants, and I'm Afro Latina.
Yeah.
So I understand where people are coming from, but I also see the trifecta of why they come.
Yeah.
So it puts me in a situation where it's like when I hear certain things, it's just like, well, that's a bit insensitive, right? Because we're all immigrants. We all had some, whether you were here by force or you came here on your own. We all are some form of
cross
immigrants.
the line to get here.
Cross the line to get here. So for me, when I hear people say like, especially now, the emphasis is a lot of Hispanic populations, and not realizing it's such a vast diaspora. So when you're talking about it, it's like, yeah, that includes everyone. So just being mindful of like how I say things or how I even perceive things, like I have to take myself out of that mind space. But it does make me more empathetic, because learning both of those histories shows like we're very much so similar, and things that we've been through. And I love the fact of like just touching on colorism and how we view that. Like, I know personally for me coming up, it was I used to hate this when people used to call me like white girl, and I used to get so mad, and it used to really agitate me. But I would say like it's the colorism factor in regards to that, and then the fact that my skin tone is lighter, and then I have fairly light eyes. It's this preconceived notion that is like, you bougie,
fairly light,
or well, they're green, so oh, you bougie, or you conceited. And it's like, I didn't even like, I don't know where you got that from. So those were some of the things, especially as a like adolescent coming into. I would have things say to me, and I'm like, I didn't even say nothing. I remember coming up when we first moved around the area, people thought I was mute, and what I would do was I would not speak because I didn't know whether to speak English, and then in some instances we were so relevant to speaking Spanish in the house. So for some time, people thought that I only spoke Spanish, or they thought I was mute. So that's always funny to me. But I was a little kid, so I really didn't know what to do or what to blend. But colorism was a big thing coming up, and sometimes that did affect my self-esteem.
Yeah. So at what point did you like recognize and accept that you're a pretty girl?
Since I was a kid, I knew I was pretty. Like, I never felt like I wasn't pretty, but I just don't like being sexualized. Like, I don't like that. Like, I would much rather be known as smart than pretty. And I know I've said that to you, and you laughed at me. So yeah, because aesthetically, like things will fade, right? But the intellect is constantly there, So for me, I would much rather be known for my impact rather than, oh, she's a pretty girl or you're a handsome guy. Like, the characteristics for me that would stand out was, he's a funny guy, he's a smart guy, not he's a handsome guy.
Thanks a lot. That's really great for my self-esteem.
No.
Appreciate it. I would never say he's handsome.
I didn't say it like that. What I'm saying...
Nah, it's cool. I know.
What I'm saying is those characteristics stand out to me more. Like, can you make me laugh? Are you smart?
Yeah. So I think it's one of those things where it's like we undervalue what we have because we didn't work to get it. You know what I mean? Like, some people who are just really, really smart have always been smart and never understood exactly why they could comprehend stuff better than the rest of the class. But that's just what they've always been. And they're like, I don't want to have to open my mouth to be appreciated. Right? Like Myra, when she walks in the room, right, she just gets to walk in the room and the room is brighter.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Some people's like when they open their mouth, the room is brighter. But everybody wants what they don't have to some degree. You know what I mean? Even if you love what you have, it's like you have a appreciation for what you don't have because you see how other people wield it
and use it to their power. So yeah, I
yeah,
see.
you know what I mean? And it's another one of those things I think that exposes that we all have more in common. We just have a different version or combination of it.
Right.
But like we're all doing the same thing in our minds and in the world. We just do it with different style.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like some people can talk you down to dust. And some people could just whoop your ass. That's just what they got.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like we all got whatever we got, you know, but like we're not it doesn't do us or anyone else a service to blame the world for not getting this.
Right.
Because when have they ever seen one before? Like
Absolutely.
I'm the first me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like on top of which, everybody is really just thinking about their own shit.
Are they?
Yes.
You think so?
Absolutely.
I think people put her on the pond in regards to like other people's shit too.
Yes, but I'm saying that for the most part,
Generally, yeah.
7.99% of the time, we're consumed with our own interests and desires and fears and
That's true.
worries and how we're perceiving the world to be. And even when we think about other people, we think about them binarily. Are you somebody that agrees with me or disagrees? Or are you somebody I agree with or I disagree with? Right. Are you pro-Trump or anti-Trump? Are you know what I mean? East Coast, West Coast. You know? It's like that binary comparison is futile, and it's so futile because it's so the opposite of these two options. Right. Like the options are infinite. You know what I mean? All these billions of expressions of a human being are individual. Right. So it's like we could really just learn to appreciate that spectrum more instead of wanting it to be black, white. It's a fucking spectrum of color. And like we could really get into all of the hues and nuances and have a better appreciation for ourselves then. Because it's like if everybody's special, I'm special. Right. You know what I mean? And I get to bring a thing into the world that only I could bring into the world. Right. So it's like I want to find out what those things are, and I want to make sure as much as possible those things are things that I want to have brought into the world. Right. Like I'm also the only one that can bring into the world the sarcasm that I can bring. Right. Do I want to be known for? Do I want to be remembered for that? Mm-hmm. No. You know what I mean? But ultimately, we're all individual, and we should just be appreciated. Like we should just appreciate each other and be appreciated, because
no one is you. There is no another person.
It's like we're all just doing a completely unique expression of life. Right. You know. And so, as you get older, right, like early 20s, like you're like an adult now, quote unquote, and nobody can tell you what time you got to be in the house or whatever adulthood freedom you got, right? Right. When you look back at that version of you, 23-year-old, 25-year-old Myra, what do you love about her?
Her resilience. Mm-hmm. It's very resilient. Like I think back now, I wasn't like able, not that I wasn't able, but I wasn't really focused on exploring, because by that time when I was 23, I had my children. I had my son and I had a daughter. Yeah. And I'm so grateful that I did it that way, because I am in my 40s now and I'm outside. Like, and they're grown and I don't have to worry about anything. I can leave and go do what I want to do. Yep. And leave for a weekend and come back, and you know, I don't have to deal with anything. I'm good.
Yeah. I dig it. I dig it. Isn't that funny how like how we can choose to look at our story with like positivity and purpose.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we can do that with the pleasant things and the unpleasant things. We could do that with the things that we personally hold dear and the things that other people, you know, laud about us and like praise us for.
Right.
It's like, it's trippy. You know what I mean? It's trippy. Like to just be inside your own head that way.
Right.
You know?
I think for me, it gives me a founder appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think because I was how I was brought up and what I experienced.
Yeah.
You know, I've always been a nurturer.
Mm-hmm.
I love children. I love being around kids.
Yeah.
I love to be able to give them back to their parents when I would like to.
Yeah.
But it's something about being around young children that it gives you perspective. Like I learn from them as much as they learn from me.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it keeps me young. Like
Yeah.
I currently right now I work at a school and I'm really grateful for that experience. I love those kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been in this realm for almost 15 years.
Yeah.
Between social services and education.
Mm-hmm.
And I would much rather be around children than adults. So yeah, that's something that's enjoyable to me.
Yeah.
I love kids.
Yeah. I agree with you. They do keep you young,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like whatever the vibration of the younger people is, if you tap into that, you stay younger.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, it's so I think about this a lot. How like when we were kids, our parents talked about our generation. Like, I don't know what y'all gonna do. Like, I don't know how y'all gonna ever take care of each other or whatever. And like we do the exact same thing, and we believe we're right. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, you're not right. Like, it's back to I don't know. To me, it sounds like an overload of positivity or whatever. But we should just praise our younger generation.
Absolutely.
Like we should just gas them up to like be the best. Like not gas them up, you know, fraudulently, but encourage the shit out of them and clap for them and express our confidence in their brilliance and their, you know, ability so that they go into life believing they can.
Absolutely.
Like, who doesn't agree with that?
That's true.
You know what I mean? But like once we get into the position, it was like, oh, this new thing is kind of irritating me. It's like I'm not on that vibration. So like this new music and the way y'all dance, that's not dancing. It's like we turned into the old heads, and it's a weird cycle because like we all know that we really, really appreciate the adults who paused to give a fuck about
what
us
we were
when we were
doing.
young, right? And like to value it even if they didn't rock with it, but like to not to try to diminish it or like, you know, judge it or whatever. And like we know who to be, we know what to be. Like we just gotta be that. We gotta like speak love into young people from infants up.
Right.
You know what I mean? And be interested in what they're doing. Cause like, how long are we gonna reference the stuff that happened before?
Right.
As like the important stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like at a certain point, we gotta like, all right. 227 was a good show, but like, it's not the greatest of all time. Can we just cool out with the like, just because it was of our coming of age era, it was the amazing. It's like, no, some stuff is amazing and some stuff is just nostalgic.
Right.
but the future is where it's all at.
So I've had my moments where I'm just like, what the hell is wrong with this generation? And some of it is based off like resilience, right? So I feel like they're like, this is just my opinion, but I feel like, and I even struggle with my own son. I got a son that's 20 and a daughter that's 18, and for me, I'm like, you guys are like the crybabies, and then I'm like, toughen up, and then I became the parent that I wish I was, that I wish I had as a parent, so as a kid. So it's just funny because I always wanted like hyper emotional intelligence. Like it was more so like we were so resilient where it was just like so much stuff, so much shit happening where it's like chip it up, get over that shit. You fell, get up. Like now it's more so like, are you okay? So just thinking back, like what you said kind of like shed a different perspective for me because again, I became the parent that I wish I had as a kid. And I feel like I'm doing good as a parent because they are emotionally intelligent. They do come to me like, Mom, you hurt my feelings when you said it like that. Or I always get told a lot about my tone. And, you know, like if I'm real comfortable with you, like I'm going to get at you. So I often get told about my tone. And in some instances, I'm like, toughen up. But then in my head, I'm like, that's dope that you're able to say that bothered me. And know like you're in a safe space where it's going to be received.
Like I told, I've had this conversation with a couple of friends of mine about how much I appreciate having disagreements and confrontations with the people I love the most, like the people that I rock with the most, because I know that love is at the center of it. I know it with these people. You know what I'm saying? So like whatever we disagree on and however we express it with respect, it's like I would much rather do this with you than
somebody else.
Do this with somebody else because like I don't give enough of a fuck about. I don't have the same regard for their well-being. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like I won't give as much grace. I won't be as patient. I won't be as empathetic. It's like I'm getting this training ground with my friends to be graceful and patient and empathetic. And then that just becomes the way I engage when it's a disagreement or confrontation. You know what I mean? It's like I love that I get to have that type of intimacy because I think it is intimacy where like you can hone each other with the friction. Like everything is not gonna come from clay molding. Some stuff comes from friction. It's like that's how it gets shaped and that's how it gets refined and we do that for each other so that we don't crumble out in the world. You know what I mean? And we don't crash out. You know what I mean? And like for you and your kids it's dope because it's like they understand a few things. Like one, they understand that they can express the feeling of being pained, right? Like they can just say that happened. You know what I'm saying? They don't have to swallow that. You know what I'm saying? And that's a dope thing for them. Especially because they're learning it from somebody that they respect the most. So like they're less likely to come at you sideways just because they feel pain. Because like you're still mom. Like I ain't gonna curse you out. They might curse somebody out in the street. You know what I mean? Or one of their friends or whoever. And it's like, but because they learned it this way with you, they have, like you said, that emotional intelligence and sensitivity, whereas they can like, they know exactly what it is and they can speak to what it is and not just say some broad attack on you or like, you know, you did this. It's like, nah, you could just say you were pained when I said such and such a certain way or when I said such and such. And not be you saying like I'm being blah blah blah. Right. And like they also get to become only resonant with that type of engagement when they go out in the world. So like they don't have the same availability for people who who do just come at it sideways.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Because they're like, this is not how you got to do this, and I don't got to take that. So like, if you can't do it like at least close to like this somehow, I can't rock with it. I can't.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We're just gonna fight.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or like, you get to weed out people. Like that's the thing about society. Is like you do need to be sensitive to and responsible for what you vibe on and what you don't, so that you're not suffering people just for the sake of having companionship or friendship or whatever. It's like you're not making yourself contorted to whatever form makes everybody else comfortable. Right. You know what I mean?
And that's a big component. Like, and I would say like I learned that through time. Like I wasn't always like that. I used to be like real passive aggressive. Now I'm just like, no, that don't work for me. Or no. Now I do have soft spots for people, like genuinely like family, certain friends, where it's just like I'll be like no, and then be like okay. But if it's a hard no, then it's a no.
Yeah.
And I would say like that's been a hyper focus as of in my life as of right now. It's just like being firm in my boundaries in regards to like this is what I'm gonna accept and this is what I'm not. And a lot of that is learned, right? So we have these processes and these journeys that kind of like show us like that's not a good decision. Don't do it. So I've been focused on honing in on that. I think my temperament, and you make fun of me, is like I don't give a shit. Like no, or I don't feel like doing that, or like it's a hard no. And I'm proud of myself for that because that took years. It took time.
Yeah, like kind of similar to what we were talking about before with like the attributes and whatnot. It's like if you're what comes naturally to you, you think other people should be able to do.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, because it ain't hard. You think it's not hard because it's not hard to you. I think it's not hard because it's not hard to me. So like, I think everybody should be able to dance or write poems or, you know what I mean, take a good photo. Like, I think everybody should be able to do that. And it's like, no, everybody can't do everything. And like, and I only do the things that I do well to a degree. There's other people out here that like doing it, running circles around me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's just the fair truth, right? But like we think what we do naturally and easily is objective. You know what I mean? And it's not.
Right.
It's like everybody's doing it different. It's crazy. I just want to. This is the first time I get to talk about this thought I've been having.
Sure.
Right. So check this out. I was thinking about how, like, take a marching band, how so many different types of instrument can create harmony.
Right.
And not only do they not have to be playing the same note, like that's not what harmony is. Everybody plays C.
Right.
It's like you got to be at least up the scale with C or in a chord with C, but like you got to you absolutely have to be playing some different note to create harmony, right? So the different instruments of the band play in harmony, and they make sounds differently.
Right.
You know what I mean? And some of them are woodwinds, and they use wood and the airflow and whatnot. And some of them are string instruments, and they just use the vibration of a wire and how that resonates sound. Some of them are percussion, and you just strike it.
Right.
It's like you create harmony with drums too, even though they're not doing the scale like a piano does.
Right.
Like the bass drum sounds different than the snare, sounds different than the tom-toms. I mean, so it's like you make different sounds, right? So all these different ways to make music, and the only way we use them is to make harmony.
Right.
It's like people are the same fucking thing. It's like everybody is making this music in a different way on a different note with a different execution.
Right.
And there is a way to be harmonious.
Right.
If we just set ourselves to being harmonious. You know what I mean? Like, because we do that with that close group of people who like,
absolutely,
we understand that for those people, there is capacity for more patience or more compassion or more generosity. And it's not the same as the people outside.
Right.
Because like, there is in personal relationships, like there is such a thing as depth, and everybody's not at the same depth.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, even if you've been friends for a long time, or if you're related by blood, or you have children together, like, that stuff does not mean that you're necessarily at the deepest depths.
Right.
Like, there's like, whoever your people are, those are the people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And they have that depth that allows you to pull more for them when you know they're not being abusive or violating you.
Yes.
Yeah, right? It's like, but they don't necessarily have to be respectful. For some reason, sometimes we'll like let that ride.
Right.
With them. You know what I mean? Or like, they don't have to be patient.
Right.
And it's like, we'll engage in the, I need you to give it a minute. It's coming out, you know what I mean? Whereas other people be like, fuck you.
Yeah, I'm not
now you ain't never getting it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's all about personal connection. Like, I think, like for me, I love my sister. That's my favorite. Like, she is just so inspirational to me. My sister's not good with time. Like, she's always late. And it's not like 10 minutes, 30. It's like an hour, and a half. And I just look at her and I'd be like, my baby. So lucky, I love you. Because I'm pretty much like, I have my moments, but generally I'm on time or I'm extra early, like 10, 15 minutes early. Only time I'm running late is if I'm like stopping to get something. But in general, like I'm typically on time. So it makes me so upset. Like I have to, like her birthday was in November, but I took her to see Maxwell in October. And I think the time it started was like 8. I was like, we got to be there by 6 because I knew like if I tell you at 8, you ain't getting here till 9. And I'm like, no, like we got to be there on time. But I think we make we adjust our expectations according to who they are, and I think exactly what you're saying. Like when it comes to certain people, you overlook things unless it's for me. Unless it's something where it's like it's a constant. Like I love you, but you always late, girl. You know I gotta tell you stuff early because then we ain't gonna be on time.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest thing. Like you set up realistic expectations for them. And that's the most important thing to be able to do.
Yeah. And another thing it does, like for us, is it exposes to us that sometimes it ain't the way we insist it is.
Right.
Right? Like sometimes it's like you don't have to do it that way.
Right.
Like it don't have to be done that way.
Right.
This other person gives you the opportunity to see that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like see when you were being adamant about something that was just subjective in your opinion.
Absolutely.
But like we would more rarely ever see those opportunities if we didn't have those
instances where it's kind of like I think it's God's grace of showing you like not yet or be patient or you it's from a movie. I think it was like for Morgan Freeman. He says when you ask God for patience, he puts you in situations to be patient. I forgot the rest of it, but that was something that stood out for me because a lot of the times we have these expectations or we're asking whoever we believe in, whether it's God or whatever religion you follow or whatever you do. We're asking for like this path, and the reality is they put you in the field getting ready to be along the path.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like you got to take these steps before you get there.
Yeah.
And sometimes, we have these preconceived notions of time, and it's whose timing and my timing. And the reality is it happens when it's supposed to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's so connected to the idea of purpose.
Right.
It's like if we believe purpose is a thing, then we have to accept that people have their purpose, and that's what it was.
Right.
And it's like it doesn't really do you much good to disagree with who they were or what they did past a certain point.
Right.
Like you might agree on a thing ideologically, like you just disagree with capital punishment.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you think the world would be a better place if that just wasn't a thing. Right? But like you don't get to disagree with anybody but so much because like you're not in their shoes.
Right.
For one.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And like for two, they're necessary. Like that expression is necessary for a larger reason than your preference. That expression is necessary.
Right.
You know what I mean? In life. If it's not necessary, it don't exist.
Absolutely.
Everything exists, and that means it's necessary.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because shit goes extinct. Like dodo birds. Like everything that exists is necessary. So like it doesn't. It's like we should appreciate that more, and even when we get it from a stranger,
right?
It's like it's almost a cheat code in another way.
Right.
It's like there's the cheat code of having your friends and your family and your close people, and being able to like spar with them, so to speak.
Right.
And then there's also a cheat code when somebody who's a stranger gives you some game inadvertently, and they don't even know they're giving you some game, but you peeped it. And it's like, oh,
right.
Oh, that's what you want. You know what I mean? And it's like you got to see that perspective also, where it's like you could decide to just be the victim of their fuckery.
Absolutely.
And like that be the storyline. Or you could be like, yo, I peeped something. You know, it's like some people when you know, some people get so offended at somebody trying to do them wrong that even if they didn't do them wrong, the fact that they tried was like enough to be like, you're
done.
Evil. You know what I mean? And that may be so, but how long do you hold that story?
And where you let it define
of that person of like,
or
like,
define them.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like that's doing everybody, including you, a disservice.
Right.
Because like you know that you're not the person that you were when you did some fuck shit.
Right.
Who didn't do some fuck shit at some point? Like you gotta live. If you live long enough, you did some fuck shit. You know what I mean? And like, I would never do the shit that you did, and you would never do the shit that I did.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But like, trying to like it gets to like the idea of cancel culture,
right?
And like how silly it is to pass the point of a personal opinion to like put somebody on a list of I don't fuck with them, and if you have principles, you wouldn't fuck with them either. It's like shit. That's wildly judgmental. That's like, you know what I mean? Like that's the death sentence socially.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, who is fucking the authority? Who has the authority to do that?
Right.
That's crazy. Like, it's wild. Like somebody did some shit. Like you just think this. Like you hear people talk all the time about whether it's like Kanye West, Donald Trump, whoever. It's like not whoever, but like a bunch of people. Kevin Samuels, the Kardashians, like people like that's an evil person. Like, wait a minute. They just did some fuck shit at some points.
Chris Brown.
Chris Brown.
I like to talk about him. I think people fail to realize, like, when that situation happened, he was a little kid. He was young. And he probably, and I'm not making excuses, but like, when you study trauma and psychology and sociology, like, you can see, like, these are things that is repetitive.
Yeah.
So, like, I felt like we did cancel him. And not acknowledging that he was, like, 16, 17. He was still young.
Yeah, also not acknowledging that he was a human being he was a R&B or a pop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Darling. Like, Chris Brown came into people's consciousness as a cute, talented, little boy. You know what I mean? And, like, he had these sweetheart songs and feel-good dance songs. And, like, he had these hits that was, like, of that type of positivity. And it's like, yeah, but you don't know, like you said, you don't know how he grew up.
Right.
You don't know what he's seen. You don't know what's been normalized to him. You don't know how he's been traumatized. You don't know nothing about the human being to cancel the human being.
Right.
It's like, you might decide you don't want to buy his records no more. You ain't got to buy nobody's records. Can't nobody make you buy nobody's records.
Right.
You can say you ain't buying this shit no more. But the canceling him and, like, that's what he is forever.
Right.
It's like, shit.
Right.
Are you what you did forever?
No, I don't think so. I do think people just have, like, certain things where, like, I do think certain things are definitely wrong. Like, in regards to, like, the justice system and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think as humans, like, that's part of evolution. Like, it's just circumstances, it's the situations you go through. It's the people you've been exposed to that cultivate and help guide you on who you kind of, like, develop to be. So I definitely believe in giving people grace, but I also want to say, and encourage, like, you still need to make sure you establish boundaries. In regards to, like, you giving grace, yes, I understand that this is your situation, but I have a choice as to whether that's something acceptable for me to deal with or for me to encounter. I think one of the biggest things that I've learned and was one of the biggest lessons that I learned from, like, my godmother was I try to be very mindful of how I'm perceived, in the sense of, like, I could be around you and I'm not a big fan of you.
Okay.
Right. But I'm still going to respect you.
Okay.
And then if it's something aligned to work, I can respect your work, but that doesn't mean that I'm like, this is my friend. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can keep you in your box and still give you your accolades in regards to who you are as a person. And that, I think, in doing that, I do my best. I'm not perfect. I do my best not to be like the example you gave. Like, this person did something to me, and if you was a person of integrity, you wouldn't be socializing with them. Like, I can't see myself doing that. Like, I vibe with who I vibe with. I like who I like. And unless it was something crazy, like, you're not gonna dictate to me who I should engage with or who I should talk to.
Yeah. And, like, we're all constantly evolving. So, like, think about, like, somebody who has an addiction and they go to rehab or whatever, and then they come out of rehab and they're sober, and then they fall back into it, and they go back to rehab, and they come out of rehab and they're sober, and they fall back into it. It's like, do you conclude that they are a perpetual falling back addict, or do you conclude that they are perpetual fighting against addiction? You know what I mean? Because they're doing both.
Right.
So it's like, you might be disappointed when they fall back into it, but that doesn't mean that that's their identity, that that's what they are.
Right. Or that you should lose you should not give them grace
Yeah.
because they have an issue. I mean, a lot of that stuff ties back to like trauma and experiences they had. I think that's hard to deal with, especially when people have those issues, and you want to be supportive. But one of the biggest things that I had to learn is that,
excuse me,
no problem, is that they have to want to be ready to make that decision, and it's really taking yourself out of the equation.
Hold on a second.
Sure.
Now, Mark.
Okay.
Can you start that over? It's like it's about. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's about taking yourself out of the equation.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is like taking yourself out of the equation and not putting yourself in their mindset because it ain't you.
Yeah.
Like you don't process things the same, or you didn't have those same situations or those inferences. So I think for me, it's kind of like eliminating myself from that process and saying, well, they should. How the hell am I to say what they should be doing? Like I can have my opinion, but the reality is, when a person is ready, they're ready. And it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with us as individuals or what we want them to be. It's what they want to be.
Yeah.
And it's their life. So if they mess up, they mess up. And if you choose to be supportive, then you be supportive. Right. Or you set boundaries around how supportive you are.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest things for me is like thinking about that. Like I think people are them. And regardless of what we think they should be, they are them. And who are we to tell them who they should be and how they should show up in the world?
Yeah. And like, we don't even agree with everything we do.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, we don't agree with every choice we make in retrospect. It's like, and a lot of times it's repeated choices that we make that we be like, man, I wish I wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? So like, we can't require somebody else to do something that we can't do. And it goes to show like why we need to ultimately be minding our business and like really focused on like, who am I being?
Right.
And how do I constantly like recreate myself to be the person I'd like to be?
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, that's my business. That's my whole business. What this one is doing and that one is doing is none of my business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
it's entertaining as hell sometimes though, but it ain't your
business. Yeah. It could be useful. You could know, but that don't make it your business. I think about that when like, even like my friends, like if somebody confides something in me, just because you told me don't make it none of my business.
Right.
Like that's still your business.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like our friendship and your need to express yourself or whatever doesn't make it my business to like do anything with
it.
All I was there to do was to listen, let that off, get that off. If you ask me for a point of view, I might have one. I might be like, nope, I can't even get into this. This is all your shit, and you know. But ultimately and mostly, my job is to listen, and just receive that you're expressing yourself, Like, I don't. It's none of my business.
Right. You know? And I think you gotta, like, for me, I know definitely with like my kids and some of my closest friends, even my sister, I was like, do you want me to listen or you asking me to respond? You asking me my opinion? You asking me, and they clarify, like, I need you just to listen. You know, I'll do that too. Like, hey, I just need to vent. I just need to talk. So, and I've done that even with you. Like, I need you to tell me, like, you identify what you need in that moment. And I think those are different kind of relationships. Because it's that vulnerability where you're like, yo, I just need you to listen. Or like, you know, you kind of smart. I appreciate your insight. Tell me what you think. So yeah.
Yeah. And I've tried to be mindful in those conversations. Like, what's useful may not be what I would do in that situation, or like my opinion on that situation. Sometimes that is, you know, what's appropriate and helpful to like have a specific perspective and point of view. But a lot of times I think it's really helpful to just offer, like, if you tell me something, because I'm not in the story, I get to choose what point of view to look at the thing.
Right.
Like, I don't have to just look at it from one point of view.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so what I would like to do is give you a few perspectives of how you could look at it.
Right.
And then, like, that's it. But like, how I would do it, I don't even know all of the impulses of why I would do it the way I would do it. So like, I couldn't explain them all.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so it's not about how I would do it. Also, even if I'm thinking about how I would do it, it's not like most of these things are like, should you flip on the light switch or not? It's like, should you make a choice that puts you down a path that then you got to walk that path and deal with the consequences?
Alone.
I'm not walking that walk with you. You know what I mean? So like, what I'm going to tell you what to do, I can just tell you how to get off the starting line and I don't got to run the race. That ain't it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, I can't make that the whole race. It's not the whole race. But it is really bugged out and trippy that depending on how we choose to look at life, it's like we could see all of these things as cheat codes and opportunities and gems, or we could see it as conflict and chaos and problems and like.
I think it's perspective, and I think like what we've been through. Like for me, I've been in social services for a long time.
Yeah, I've
seen some really difficult things to see.
Yeah.
So like I'm like, and I even tell my kids, I'm like, you got a roof over your head, right? Yeah. You got clothes on your back. Yeah. You got food in the fridge. Mm-hmm. You good. Mm-hmm. You good. Mm-hmm. And you know, I think it's because I've seen those situations where it was just like, it makes you more appreciative of just the fundamental things that you have. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing, like for me, is making sure my kids know that too. Mm-hmm. Like the stuff that we view as so important is so irrelevant. Mm-hmm. Like the fundamental things. Are you fed? Do you have food? Mm-hmm. Or do you have access to get food? Yeah. Do you have somewhere to stay? Whether it's an apartment, whether it's a shelter, it's still like something that that is shelter. Yeah. Do you have clothes? Like that's the mindset for me. And like I would say I've developed myself in a great deal because before I was more so reactive. Like now I'm like processing, like, you know, it's all right, you had a rough day. It's not that serious. Mm-hmm. The day that you're out of work, you're going home to your family. Focus on that. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the things that we choose to focus on. I know personally for me, I was raised by a very resilient woman. I wasn't brought up to be like, you know, these things happen and they happen to me rather than saying, you know, these things happen. Mm-hmm. And the victimization of things. Like for me, I know this is a trigger for me. If I'm dealing with somebody that's constantly like the victimization of things, I'm just like, all right, like how long you gonna use that as an excuse as to why you're doing the things that you're doing? Or like, oh, you were being mean to someone. Did that make you a better person? Right. You know, did it put money in your pocket? Right, like, right. What did that do to benefit you? So, you know, in those experiences, it created a deeper sense of empathy in a way. And I'm grateful for it because you know, as long as my fundamental needs are met, I'm fine. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not focused on that other stuff. Right. Yeah, there's like, I've been having conversations about this. I had a couple of conversations about this like this week, funny enough, that what my dream is to be able to live where my attention and concentration and time and energy is mostly applied to creativity. Right. And my livelihood is running on a machine that I don't have to do the labor of like food, shelter, like all those tangible things. Like that stuff, the economics in that is just running on a machine. Right.
You know what I mean? And like my job is to not live above my means. You know what I mean? But as long as I live within my means,
Mm-hmm.
I have food, I have shelter, I have clothes. You know what I mean? I have enough comfort to be creative.
Right.
Cause like, and I think that's the best life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that opens the door to do so many things. Like it opens the door to be a student as an adult and like let yourself continue your education in
Right.
whatever way, whether it's by traveling and meeting different people in different cultures or going to school
Mm-hmm.
or apprenticing somewhere, like whatever it is, like if you could do that, how much better is it that you can do that when you're an adult? Because as an adult, you're more likely to do it. Not that you're more likely, you have the freedom to be educated in what you're interested in.
Right.
Whereas kids have to get the whole curriculum as it's given
As
to
it
them.
is.
And it's like, if you're even if you're a music prodigy, you know what I mean, or like really talented, you know, as in music in some way, you don't get to take advanced music classes the way you get to take advanced English.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or like, even if you can't fill up your day on music.
Right.
Unless you have very peculiar circumstances of like homeschooling and like some other type of stuff. But like for most children, they don't get to pour more into their interests.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which is why young people in all generations create their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this generation creates rock and roll, and this generation creates funk, and this generation creates hip hop, and this generation creates Jersey Club, and like all these different generations create their thing because it's like
That's the outlet.
you wouldn't. Yeah, this is what I would like to pour myself
Right.
into. I would love to pour myself into graffiti and fashion and rapping and music. You know what I mean? Like I would prefer that if I could, right? Among other things, but like that's what my generation created. You know what I'm saying? And it was for that reason.
Right.
It was like we love art. We love art so much that we will create our own canvases out of your subway trains, and we'll use spray paint because we can learn and practice how to do that and get better at that in a way that we can't do with sculpting.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you can't get better fast with that art medium as you can with a spray can.
Right.
You know what I mean? And this music thing where it's like we like these break beats of the song.
Mm-hmm.
Like we love this drum break so much that we just want to play that and listen to that and create dances around the percussion. You know what I mean? Because like the music dictates the dance, you know, and so like the focus of the music dictates the focus of the dance. It's like music in the 50s and 60s was more two people dancing together. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And then they would have to like have a dance that had a name for you to do it by yourself.
Right.
But like most of them, you still did it with another person.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like you don't do Jersey Club with a person necessarily. You can do it all by yourself, the whole song, every song. Like you don't have to dance with a group. You don't have to dance with a partner. Mm-hmm. You just do your own thing. You know what I mean? And it's like we have this constant evolution of how we express what we're interested in, generation after generation after generation. And like it would be dope if we could just lean into our creativity and the other stuff be taken care of. Like I'm not saying fuck capitalism and all that. Like whatever the economics are, they're handled.
Right.
You know what I mean? But we actually have the freedom to do creativity.
Right.
It's like it's not communism. You know what I mean? But like that's what my dream life would be. To be like be creative and be a student and be in the art of life. You know, and the science of life. But like not in the labor of life.
Right.
I don't want to be in the labor of life. That's my dream, to not be in the labor of life. You know what I mean? And to really pour it, because like then all those other things, like, you know, the job and the living in this neighborhood and all those other like pressure points and whatnot create friction for our time with our family and for our creativity and for our peace of mind and rest and all that stuff. So it's like, how could we eliminate all that? Right. Like, I don't necessarily want to live in the expensive part of town. Right. I want to live in a place that feels like home and peace and the space for me to be the fullest expression of me. Right. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I want. Mm-hmm. So, like, it's not about more expensive as what's better. Right. It's like, just like, I want to live in a place that makes all the sense in the world for me. Right. You know what I mean? I think about that a lot with this crib. It's like, this feels like me every day. I don't ever feel out of place here. I don't ever feel like this is just a place for shelter. Right. It's like, I like looking around here. I like the space. You know what I mean? I like the design. I like that I can put my own art up. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I like that the sofa is pink. Like, I just like this shit. Right. You know? And so I have the comfort to be creative at home. It's like, that's why I have a photo studio at home. And that's why I write poetry at home and I dance at home. I do all the things at home. Right. I don't have to leave home to do that. To do it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. What are you most like interested in and excited about, like your most recent evolutions or whatever? Like, when you see yourself accomplish things or evolve and mature in whatever ways, or it's like you used to cuss somebody out and now you're like, that's not my problem.
I would say some of my accomplishments, I'm really like, okay, this is growth. Mm-hmm. I'm learning that, and because I'm such a nurturer, you hear it always geared towards my family. Yeah. That as much as I want my children to do things the way that I was brought up to do it, I'm accepting their individualism. Right. Where I'm just like, I don't quite get it, but I ain't gonna knock it. Got you. Or like, you know, this is a challenge for me to understand, but I'm gonna support you. I'll show up. And even taking that mindset through work. Like, I'm just like, that's not my job. Yeah. That's not part of my job description. That doesn't, you know, let me walk away. That has nothing to do with me. And I've been real focused on that energy in regards to, like, you know, I feel like, especially as a woman, and I'm such a just nurturer, like my mindset was like, how can I help them? Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, fuck that. Let them figure it out themselves. And that's not my problem. Got you. So I've been really focused on that, and I'm real grateful for that. And, you know, one of the key factors in how I learned that was mourning. Mm-hmm. I've been in a process of mourning. Okay. And I think during that process, I got to let go of the overly resilience. I got it. Don't worry. I'll figure it out. Yeah. And just focus on, like, I don't got it. Mm-hmm. I need help. Or can you take over this duty for me? Because right now I don't have the capacity to do it. So I'm really focused on kind of like sharing information. I think, sharing tasks. I think because of the over resilience at those different stages of my life, because I was typically in the fight or flight mode. I chose to fight, so it's kind of like you become overly dependent on yourself. And I'm really just learning to be like, I don't got it, or like, nah, that's not a good time for me right now. Or I'll say things like, that's not good for my mental health right now. I'll follow back up with you, or maybe we could do it another time. Or just basically saying no. So I'm really been focused on that. I'm focused on things that make me feel good. Like if I know when I'm around this environment or around these people, it's a like a fake where it's like I'm pretending to kind of like maneuver the room and things like that. I don't want to go. So I'm being more mindful of how I choose to spend my time. And I'm grateful for that. Because I think before I was raised by a community advocate, community leader. So I was always kind of like, it was ingrained in me like, toughen up. Like, all right, it's bigger than you. We're going to go here. We're going to go do this. And then we'll get to the things that you need to focus on. And I would say during my time of mourning, I've seen like a change where it's like, nah, I'm first. Like I can't focus on a community. I can't focus on anybody until I focus on me first. And that is something that I've been like learning. And I'm so grateful for it.
That's dope.
And sometimes it's hard because I have to catch myself. Like, no, it's not. It's not for me to fix. So.
Because it goes back to that idea of like, every expression is necessary. You know what I mean? It's like, but it's not necessary that we copy and just replicate a previous expression.
You
know what I mean? And it's dope that you have that prioritization of yourself and your well-being and your capacity, and that you don't judge yourself or your mom. You know what I mean? As like, you shouldn't do it that way, or you shouldn't do it. You know what I mean? It's like, that was right for them. This is right for me. And it's one of the best treats of life, like to learn a new thing that you appreciate about yourself. Like a recent development, you know what I mean? A new expression, a new like genuine identity of like how you are showing up in the world. You know what I mean? Because like that stuff like gives you the push to stay on that path of like, all right, how can I learn the truth of me so I can be the true me?
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
I think it's very like important to go through those trials, right? Like they add to so much of your self growth and development. I wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for the trauma that I was impacted by. And I wouldn't think the way that I think. I wouldn't act the way that I act. You know, those things. Not that they make me, but they help cultivate me and understanding like this, you're better than this, or setting those boundaries. So that is how I view those situations. And I try my best to kind of like, I ain't nobody victim. I'm real firm on that. Like, to the point where I'm like,
what it is.
It is what it is. Like, I'm very a big person on faith. I, feel as though like what's for you and what's for you is what's for you, and what's not is what's not. And I view things as a lesson. Like, what did I need to learn from this situation, or what did I need to learn from what happened, and how can I put myself in a better situation if I'm faced with this situation again? So that's kind of like what I choose to focus on. I might sit a little bit in it because we're human, right? We're gonna be in our emotions, but my biggest thing is like, all right, this happened. For a little bit you sit, but then like, all right, how do we fix it? How do I get over it? How do I get over this hurdle? And that's just the mindset that I have. I very like gratitude. Like I'm focusing on that. Like, I'm grateful I woke up this morning. I might be in a little pain, but I woke up this morning, somebody didn't. Or I'm grateful that I got a job. And even in those moments where I'm like, damn, this place. But in my head, I'm like, I'm grateful that I got a job. And I'm able to provide for my family. I'm able to be there for my family while getting my education, while being able to be a mentee, while being able to just be a mother. Like, I'm grateful for these opportunities because they're very important into defining who I am and how I'm perceived in the world and how I perceive the world.
Yo, thank you for coming, man.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you. This is dope.